Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our daily podcast. My name is Wat Tyler, and I am the peasant revolt commander. We all know the German peasant revolt has been going on for a while, and so many peasants have been massacred. I became the leader of the peasant revolt because they are fighting for a just cause, and I think it's pretty fair for us to enjoy the fruits of our labor. We pay 10% of our wages as tithe to the church, and we also pay other percentages as taxes to the government, which goes to the upper class. This has made the peasants to be poor, and they suffer to feed the upper class. Today, I have decided to invite two special guests with me in the studio. Please welcome Reverend Martin Luther and Reverend Thomas Munzer. I have a series of discussion questions for us to talk about today. I will ask you the questions, then you introduce yourself and proceed with your answer. So, what is your take on the German peace revolt? Over to you, Reverend Thomas Munzer. My name is Thomas Munzer, and I've been working with Martin Luther since he wrote the 95 Theses, fighting for the poor masses. His writing was correct about the church selling indulgences. The upper class had no issues with it, but the poor suffer a lot because they give all they had to the church in order for their family members who have passed on to glory to leave purgatory and go to heaven faster. I have been writing too about these church reforms. When it comes to the peasant war, I give them full support. I stand with them. All right. Now, thank you very much for your support to the peasant revolt. Now let's hear Reverend Martin Luther on this. Yeah, I am Martin Luther. I wrote the 95 Theses to fight for the idea of church selling indulgences, faith, and deeds, and other practices of the church. These practices are so wrong, and after I posted the thesis, the church came after me. They know it was the truth, and they were going to lose money. The upper class always pay without complaints, but the poor were people exploited. Salvation is not for the rich or either to be sold. When I wrote the thesis, I specified that buying indulgences will not help you get to heaven faster from purgatory. Indulgences had no impact whether one will get to heaven or not. Secondly, I stated the Bible. I stated that the Bible is the central authority and salvation is reached through faith alone and not deeds. When it comes to the German peace revolt, I would like to quote the scripture, Ephesians 6:5-9 from the New Testament, which says, according to verse 5, slaves, be obedient to those who are your masters according to the flesh, with fear and trembling, in the sincerity of your heart, as to Christ. Verse 6, not by way of eye service, as men pleasers, but as slaves of Christ, doing the will of God from the heart. With good will render service, as to the Lord, and not to men. Verse 8, knowing that whenever good thing each one does, this would receive back from the Lord, whether slave or free. And masters, do same things to them, and give up threatening, knowing that both their master and yours is in heaven, and there is no partiality with him. With this scripture, I tell you that I don't support the violence, and I want the peasant to continue to pay their 10% tax and other taxes levied on them without causing a war. In this war, the military is well armed, and the peasants are the ones that have been massacred massively, and they have lost their lives. I stand for peace, and I call for the peasants to drop down their weapons and surrender. Thank you very much. To conclude, I am Tyler again. I want to thank you so much for your wonderful collaboration in this interview. I know it took all of you long distances to come to this studio for this interview. Your opinion or your point is what would go out there to the public, and it doesn't raise any argument here in the studio whether who is right or who is wrong. We know you, Mr. Reverend Martin Luther, you almost got killed except for the help of Frederick that saved you and hid you under his territory. So from that point of perspective, we understand everything. I have other several questions that we could have further deep dive into, but we will end here for today. Again, I want to say a big thank you to Reverend Thomas Munzer, and I want to say a big thank you to Reverend Martin Luther. Thank you all for coming. And we have come to the end of our podcast for today. Thank you so much. Thank you.